And today I'm going to talk about encouraging eating during COVID-19. And before I start, I'm just going to make something very clear. I'm not a dietitian and I'm not a nutritionist. So it's not actually going to be about the nutritional value of the food the person eats. The subject is really enticing people and encouraging people to eat who may have a small appetite, or perhaps tips for discouraging people who are overeating. So just to get started, things that can affect the person's relationship with food if they have dementia. So the person may experience a number of things: an altered sense of taste and smell, for example. The ability to interpret a sensation such as hunger, thirst, fullness may be reduced or lost. So for example, you could have someone who has eaten a meal, they're full after their dinner, but they've forgotten they've eaten the meal because they have short-term memory loss. They also have the reduced sensation of hunger or fullness. So they then think they should be able to eat another dinner, and sometimes do. And this can lead to overeating. And I've had people who have done that, gone out and had their lunch, maybe somebody who lives alone, gone out, had their lunch in the local pub, and then gone down the street to the cafe and had another dinner. Now, I've had that happen. So that's something that can affect people. Or they may not feel hungry at all and may not want to eat, or may not eat at the right time and need to be prompted. Something else that can affect them is distraction and not understanding that food is to be eaten, or they may have, and that might impair their nutrition. And the person may lose appetite or start overeating. So they're the things that we have that can affect a person with dementia and their relationship with food. So what can help? Prompting and encouraging with favorite food. So getting to know the person very well is important. Finding out what kind of food they like and what kind of food, very importantly, that they don't like, something that they just don't want to eat. There's no point giving them. I remember President Bush saying he wouldn't eat broccoli. It was a big thing at the time about broccoli. But he wouldn't eat broccoli. If he, God forbid, got dementia, he couldn't eat broccoli because he didn't like it. Same with a lot of people. They have a particular food that they dislike or have an aversion to, and they have foods that they like. So try and find the food that the person likes and make the food that they enjoy and make it tasty. Eating with the person can be very helpful so that he or she can see what to do. So for example, if you plonk a plate of food in front of somebody, they may well forget to pick up, they may not be able to motivate themselves to pick up the knife and fork and eat the food. They may need to be reminded. So actually sitting down with the person at the same level and having the meal yourself, having a meal similar to theirs yourself. Or even if you're not going to eat, even if you had, say, a drink of water or a cup of tea, and you're sitting at the table and you're, keeping them company and smiling. Smiling is very important. So you could say, have another little bite. That looks nice there. Would you have a little bit of that? Have some of that nice vegetables there. Have oh, look at the lovely chicken. And just encourage the person to eat. Keeping a diary or notes about what is being eaten. If you're worried about somebody not eating enough and you give them the dinner, well, you might be able to take a note of the fact that you gave them a plate of dinner, but they only ate half of the dinner. So at least you know how much dinner they're eating. Same with drinks. If you're worried about somebody not drinking enough, you can keep a record of how much fluids they're taking in the day. And using meaningful activities to distract from overeating. So again, for somebody who is eating too much, they may be snacking through boredom. And if you provide activities, that might distract them enough so that they're not always running to the cupboard or the biscuit tin. So preparation is very important. So maintaining a routine is very important. And we were always telling people this, to maintain a routine when someone has dementia. Now, during COVID, that has been quite difficult to do because our routines have been thrown out the window. But routine around food is quite important so that you have you have substantial meals during the day. You have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or if you prefer, breakfast, dinner in the middle of the day, and a tea in the evening. Depends on what suits your household. Remind the person to go to the toilet before they sit down to eat. Now, that's a very important tip. And it applies to whether they're at home in their own house sitting, or if they are actually going out for a meal. Now that restrictions have lifted slightly, we are able to go out to restaurants and hotels and places like that to have something to eat. So advice, if you have someone with dementia with you, when you get to the venue, check where the toilet is. How far away is it? Do you have to go up a flight of stairs? Do you have to use a lift? Make sure that you know where it is located on arrival. And then when you go in, maybe between ordering the food and the food's arrival, because there's a delay, encourage the person to use the bathroom. So that when the food arrives, they don't suddenly say, oh gosh, I need to use the bathroom. And you have to leave the table, they have to go, or you have to maybe go with them. And by the time you come back, the meal is ruined. Same at home. If you're sitting in at the table, it's worth building that into your plan of making the food to remind the person to use the bathroom so that they don't have to go to the toilet in the middle of eating their meal. Let the person help prepare the meal. So, for example, if the person is able to peel potatoes, chop carrots, chop fruit, whatever they're able to do, prepare a salad, peel boiled eggs, whatever they're able to do, allow them to maintain their skills by assisting in the preparation of the meal. And in doing that, there's a certain element of anticipation of eating. The smell of food and the sound of cooking, the noise from the pots and pans and cutlery, the bubbling of maybe soup in a pot, that can stimulate appetite as well. And smell, of course, is a great appetizer. You know yourself, if you come into the kitchen and you can smell the baking, or you can smell the stew, or you can smell whatever it is, it always stimulates your appetite. You can always feel, if people start saying, oh, the smell of that is making me feel hungry as they walk past the chip shop. So smell and the sense of smell can be quite important. Reduce noise and distractions. That is quite important. So we're saying about the noise of the pots and pans and the rattling, but not banging. The gentle sounds of the cutlery being put out, or the pots being moved around, or the lid being placed on the top of the pot, is different to banging and clattering. Too loud of a noise can be very distracting. And other distractions, such as a loud television or a loud radio in the room where they're eating. Have a designated dining area, such as the kitchen table or the dining room, so that the person can identify with sitting there and in this place as their place to eat. So if they identify it with eating, and make sure the person is comfortable. So they may have, there might be a cushion on the chair that's not comfortable. Their clothes might not be comfortable on them. Just make sure that they're feeling comfortable and seated comfortably at the table. So, some reasons why the person with dementia may not eat well. There might be very practical reasons for this. They might have a dry mouth or dental discomfort. They may have diminished motor skills and may not recognize utensils or be unable to use them. Now, I'm going to give you some information about that. I have a little picture I'm going to show you later on about utensils that might be able to help and give you some information on that. There's other things that can affect you. Constipation and depression can affect a person's appetite. Side effects of medication can affect appetite. The person sensing impatience in the person helping. Now, that's a big one. And Tom Kitwood, in his writings in the 1990s, talked about malignant social psychologies, and one of them is a thing called outpacing. And I often talk about outpacing because it's quite common, and people may do it without even realizing they're doing it. They're in a hurry, the person is slow at eating, and they're rushing them. I haven't got all day, I have to get that dinner into you. That does not help the person with dementia. They can sense your impatience and they just give up. So it is important to give the person time and respect to eat their dinner. Distractions such as noise, I've covered that. Other people milling around. So if you're in the kitchen and everybody else comes in and they're all talking to each other and you're not even part of the conversation, you might lose interest in the food. You might get distracted with what's going on. Having a big plate full of food can be very, very off-putting. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. You're wondering what this is. I'm going to do a little demonstration in a moment. Being rushed, TV or radio on too loud. Changes in sense of taste can affect a person with dementia. And the part of the brain that enables you to taste may be affected. Changes in feeling full or hungry or thirsty. We kind of covered that as we went along. So tips to improve meal times. Where possible, involve the person in preparing food. Try to ensure that the food is to the person's liking. Ensure the food is not too hot or too cold. And this can occur, might put something in the microwave, for example, to heat up, and it could be heat spots. So make sure when you're serving the food that it's at a right temperature. You don't want someone to burn themselves. And if it's too cold, if it's lukewarm or it's not hot enough, it's going to be not very appetizing. But it's important that they don't burn themselves also. So just take care with that one. Ask if the person would like their food cut up into manageable pieces. Now, for example, if you know that the person will take a huge steak and try and stick it in their mouth without cutting it up, you might have to be tactful about this. The person may say, oh yes, can you help me with my cutting up? They might say, no, I'm fine, and then nearly choke on a big piece of food. So try and say, oh sure, I'll help you with that. Just find your way, think about it. Everything's about the planning and tact and encouraging the person. If the person has problems swallowing fluid or food, contact the GP or the public health nurse and get a referral to the speech therapist. Now, the speech therapist is the expert in swallow problems. They will assess the person swallow. They'll assess them, see where the swallow problems are, or if there are any, and then make certain recommendations. And those recommendations could be that the person needs the food cut up all the time. It could be that the person needs to eat the food minced. It could be that the food needs to be pureed or blended. It may mean that the food needs to be thickened or the liquids need to be thickened. They will also give you advice at what angle the person should sit at whilst they are eating the food. And a golden rule is never feed someone when they're lying down, never feed someone before they're fully awake, and don't try feeding anyone when they are agitated. Nutritional supplements can be sought from the GP. If you have a person with dementia who's, no matter what you do, is just not eating enough to keep their nutritional needs satisfied, then you can actually get nutritional supplements. And they are little yogurts and drinks and so on that can help fortify the person, but they are not a meal substitute, and that's important to note as well. And just in case, I'm actually going to send this, I have a little presentation here in front of me, and I'm going to send it on to Helen, and Helen can distribute it. So don't worry about taking notes about anything. Now, I'm going to do a little demonstration here about colours and table setting, a sort of practical demonstration. So here we have this big reveal. You can get this off without knocking everything down. So, right. So when we're setting the table, block colours can be very helpful. So here we have an example of a tablecloth that is really too fussy. If you've got someone with dementia, you'd be better not to have a tablecloth that's too fussy like this. Because when you put the plate up against it, the person might be unable to tell the difference between the food on the plate and, say, for example, to have that, they mightn't be able to tell the difference between the food on the plate and the food drawn on the cloth. So we wouldn't encourage a big, busy pattern like this. So we'd take that away. Now we have a white tablecloth here. Most families would have a white damask tablecloth somewhere in a drawer and take it out on special occasions or maybe all the time. If you put a white plate on that, you can see that the plate blends into the background. And it might be difficult for the person to tell the difference between the edge of the plate and the background. So what is recommended is that the person would actually, with the clapper now, a plate of a contrasting colour. Now here I have, this is only a paper plate because I actually am at home and I don't have red delf, I don't have red china. But so I have this little red plate just for the demonstration purposes. I'm not suggesting you give people food on paper plates. It's just to show you the contrast in colours. You can see there's quite a distinctive contrast in colours there. But if I were to put the red plate on a red tablecloth, you could see that it blends in. Whereas if I use the white plate, make sure I don't lose my plate, on the red tablecloth, you can see that there is a contrast. This gives people a chance to tell the difference between the plate and the table. And it also, red is supposed to be very stimulating. There are studies to suggest that food on a red plate encourages people to eat. So we're going to just have a little look at that again. So we have our red plate on a block background here. It's not enough just to have the red plate though. We'll take our little tomato again. If you put red food on a red plate, again, it blends in. So you really need to be creative and put your different coloured food. You can see the different coloured foods. Now, none of these are cooked, of course, because they don't fall down. There you have different colours on your red plate, and that will help stimulate the person's appetite. And there are studies to show that people who eat food on red plates eat more food. The other suggestion we would make is that if the person is overwhelmed by the amount of food, that you put it on a bigger plate, because food on a bigger plate looks smaller, whereas if you have the same amount of food on a smaller plate, it looks very overwhelming. It looks like it's filled the plate. So you can use that accordingly. So if the person has a small appetite and they're overwhelmed when they see a big plate of food, put the food on a big plate. If they're overeating and they think they're not getting enough, put the food on a small plate. It's just a